So today, my message is on crossroads. I wanted to make a joke because this picture looks like it was taken like in the 1930s, and I was going to make a joke about how that was nice of Pastor to share a picture from when he was a little kid, but I was encouraged not to do that. So at one time or another in our lives, we have all arrived at an important junction, and we've had to make a decision. Life is strange, and when when you come across that empty shell person, and we think, what the heck happened to you? Well, in their lives, there was a time, and they had to decide to whether they go right or they go left. Or in my profession, we say east or west. And if you go north, you're just going to go right back from the direction you came from. So as we build our lives through Christ and we look back at the long roads that we have traveled, and we look back behind us, we first have to face our denial. Because in the beginning, we denied that we needed Him. And then there came a time and we decided to surrender. And we took an honest look at our lives, and we became humble enough to allow God to make the changes in our lives that we needed. Everybody knows it's hard to be humble. But before we knew it, we were forgiving, and we were asking for forgiveness, and we're changing and growing in ways that we would have never believed possible on our own power. And it was all because we decided to turn our lives over to the care of God. Jesus will come in at your invitation, and He will help you build that foundation for your life. So in that idea, I would like to share the story about Gideon. He was a great military leader from the book of Judges in the Bible. And if you look him up on Wikipedia, that's what it says, great military leader. As a leader of the Israelites, he came to victory over the Midianites army, and I'm going to say that word wrong. I'm just apologizing. I've been practicing for like 3 or 4 days. He led an army of only 300 troops, and when he met their army, they had over 100,000. The story of Gideon is one that I love to share with anyone who's standing at a crossroads. The same type of crossroads that I myself have stood at. The Midian had oppressed Israel when the Lord called upon Gideon. The angel of the Lord came and sat under a tree where Gideon was threshing wheat in a wine vat in order to hide it. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon said to him, "Please, sir, if the Lord is with us, why has this happened to us? And where are all His wonders that our fathers told us about?" They said, "Hasn't the Lord brought you from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and deliver Israel." Gideon said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I deliver Israel? Look, if you look at my family, it's the weakest in the village. I'm the youngest in my father's house. But I will be with you," the Lord said to him, "and you will strike Midian down as if they were just one man." That's Judges 6:11 through 21. So Gideon himself was standing at a crossroads, north, east, west, south, or as so many truck drivers have said to me over the years, "Yeah, but do you mean left or right?" And I'm always forced to answer them, "I don't know, what direction are you heading in?" So when Gideon hears that he will save the Israelite people from their oppressors, he really doesn't believe it at first. He is the smallest in his eyes. He is the least equipped. He has bigger brothers, perhaps a mean sister, or a dog that bites. So he tests God. Then Gideon says to God, if you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you say, you will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor, and if dew is only on the fleece and the ground is completely dry, I will know that you will deliver Israel with only my strength, as you say. And that is exactly what happened. When he got up early in the morning, he squeezed out the fleece and he wrung it out dry, and it filled a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, don't be angry with me. Let me speak one more time, please. Please allow me to make sure that this test with the fleece is true. Let the fleece remain dry this time, and the dew be all over the ground. So that night, God did just as Gideon requested. Only the fleece was dry, and there was dew all over the ground. That's Judges 6:33-40. This right off the bat seems to contradict the command that says, do not put the Lord to the test, out of Deuteronomy. But Gideon appears to test God a lot. First, he requires him to put dew on the fleece that he lays out on the ground. And then he asks for the opposite, to leave the fleece dry on the wet ground. So at this, Gideon believes that the Lord is calling him, and he gathers an army of 32,000 men. And even though the Mennonite army is enormous, it's enough for Gideon to be comfortable in leading this charge. But God has other plans. So he decides to enlist a series of his own tests for Gideon. Fair game, right? So first, he tells Gideon to send home anybody that is afraid, which it turns out that 22,000 of the 32,000 were scared, so they went home. So with only 10,000 men left, God makes them drink water. It's very specific about putting their hands to their mouth and drinking the water. Apparently, only 300 of those men could follow directions. So the other 9,700 men who kneeled to drink the water were also sent home. So with just 300 men, Gideon is sent in to defeat the army. And he knows, certainly, that he must rely on God to provide this miracle. There is actually much more to Gideon's story, and there's way too much to unpack. But I suggest that anyone that is at a crossroads in their life continue to read the entire story. It's the 2 chapters to get the full picture. It's in Judges chapters 6-8. But the part of the story that I want to share is that Gideon's story reads like an action movie. He is the unlikely hero. And he rises to the challenge against all odds to accomplish what most people thought would be impossible. While the story seems to be like one of those too good to be true movies, this is actually historically a reality with spiritual significance. Pictured in the life of Gideon are several guidelines for believers who desire to do great things through God. We must never forget the prophet Daniel, who said that those who know God will do great. What often do you think brings us to a crossroad? And just because he's mine, I can pick on him. So TJ, can you think of a particular crossroad that you've crossed in your life lately? And I'm not talking about Jolly and Cedar. And I get to call it Jolly because I remember when it was Jolly.
Well, there's this time where I couldn't decide between Mayor Kobe and General Crawl.
Okay, we're not talking about action figures. So on your chairs, I also put a little third sheet of paper that had different things that could take you in particular to one of those crossroads. Would anybody be willing to call out one or two of these things that are on your sheets? Significant, difficult problems, unpleasant situations, misfortunes, trauma, grief, loss, addiction, racism, stress. All of those things are things that could lead you to a crossroad, where you're standing at that crossroad and you'll have to make a decision where you're going next. And all of those things fall under the category of adversity. So why not appreciate adversity? That sounds not like a typical worldly idea. When we use the word appreciate, we refer to a perception, not necessarily just an enjoyment or a pleasure. You can appreciate a lot of things. For instance, music. Not everyone likes to hear Tom Jones croon, why? No, I'm not going to sing Delilah. Or Kurt Cobain vocalizing whatever that is that he's saying when he's got the mic up to his, I don't think he even has a mic that close to his mouth. It just sounds like that. When he says, come as you are, come as you will. When we're introduced to Gideon, he is experiencing great adversity. The pagan nation has overthrown Israel. They're starving and hungry and homeless, and they've been swept into an area. The Midianites have swept into his area, or into the Israel area, and the scripture describes them like locusts. They ravage the land, take what they want, they ravage their inhabitants. God always hears us, but the scripture reveals that he has a special response for people who cry out in humility for divine assistance. God in his sovereignty allows adversity. The Bible says that we should consider it a joy when we experience trials, because they test our faith. That's James 1:2. 1 Peter says, adversity refines us in our faith and turns it into greater than gold. Adversity is a training ground for God's glory. Here is our crossroads. Many saints are frustrated, defeated, and confused. And they expect faith to eliminate adversity instead of adversity strengthening our faith. If you find yourself in a difficult situation, you can always expect God to teach you, to shape you, and to equip you into something greater. Scriptures reveal trials that there's scriptures that reveal trials that turn into triumphs through God. Abraham had to leave his home to follow God. Joseph was thrown in prison before reaching the palace. Moses lived in exile before leading Israel out of Egypt. David, Mary, and Joseph all had to flee for their lives. And the Apostle Paul spent years in the desert. The list goes on from there. Throughout Christian history, adversity has prepared his people. God used adversity to prepare his people for greater accomplishments. So here is your challenge. At your crossroads, accept your identity. Gideon had to accept that God said to him, mighty warrior. Gideon did not feel or probably did not look like a mighty warrior at the time. He was living in a spiritually backslid nation and family. He threshed wheat while hiding it in a wine press so it could not be stolen, so they could have food. Gideon's own description of himself was, "My clan is the weakest of the clans, and I'm the least of my family." Gideon was a small man living in a clan in fear and disobedience. God declares who and what we are by his power, not by what we have done or what our circumstances are. He sees beyond our faults, failures, and limits. God prophesies over Gideon a new identity. He is a mighty warrior because God says he's a mighty warrior. Regardless of what his family says or other tribes say, this is what God says about you when you're condemned by your enemies. God says that you are his child. You are his friend. You are justified, forgiven, and no longer condemned. You are more than a conqueror. You are his workmanship, and you are created for good works. You are a royal priest, declaring good news like a shining star. You are blood-bought, spirit-filled, heaven-bound, heavenly equipped warrior with special armor designed to tear down the strongholds of your enemies. Perhaps you have heard the story. You've heard the story of the polar bear cub. And the polar bear says to his dad, he says, "Dad, are you sure that I'm not a lion or maybe a bird or a cow? I know I'm not a cat, right?" And the dad says, "That's right, son. Why are you questioning whether or not you're a polar bear?" And the cub says, "Because the wind is so cold out here." Sometimes we just need to be reminded who we are when the wind of the world is challenging our faith. So act upon the authority. Don't confuse this by acting boldly or courageously without divine intervention. Going into battle with 300 men against 135,000 is crazy unless God has called you to do so. At your crossroads, listen for God. We learn from the story that God's authority leads us in humility. God instructed Gideon to reduce the troops so that everyone knew that it was him providing the victory. Are you willing to do great things without getting the credit for them? Ronald Reagan once said that there is no limit to what you can do, what you can accomplish when you're willing to give somebody else credit. So in conclusion, some of God's greatest works in transforming something that seems so small into something so glorious include Gideon began as a coward, and he finished his life as a great warrior. Abraham and David started out as adulterous. Moses committed murder. The Apostle Paul self-described himself as the chief of all sinners. So many of us could fit so many others could fit on this list before they asked for the transforming touch to make them save them from their sins. Today we consider the cross, which is actually an instrument of torture, an enduring symbol of hope and grace. Why? Because at the crossroad, God took that garbage and he turned it into greatness. He did with Gideon's life, and he can do the same thing with your life. Listen for his voice, and he will meet you at your crossroads. Thank you for letting me share.